Nothing really compared to Europe, but we got our fair share of nice views. Going straight up. Oh, come on, dude. That was not the path to go. Jesus. Oh, more. Come on, dude. I'll give you guys a quick little rundown of what engine is inside of my car. I used to have an M52, but the M52 blew up and I found an M50 block that had CP pistons, eagle rods, and the 84mm bore was overbored to 86.5mm. So it has an M50 block with M52 everything else, which is why the oil fill is on the front and not on the back. But it technically is an M50 OBD2. The only way I was able to make that happen on the M50, there is no crank position sensor on the side of the block like it is on the OBD2 blocks. So I have a Euro Z3 crank sensor that's on the front crank, and it's the same type of sensor that the OBD2 uses, and that's how this whole thing was able to be done. I got this used bottom end for $300 on Facebook Marketplace that came out of a full-on race car, and the guy was upgrading to an S54. And he wasn't using this block anymore, and he needed new rings and bearings, and I bought it when I was already doing new rings and bearings on the M52 that had previously blown up. So now I have a built bottom end with stock everything else basically, and it has an eBay GT3582 turbo with a .82 hot side instead of the .63. And yeah, it's pretty basic. It has injector dynamics, 1050cc injectors, so that I can run E85, and this car makes 644 wheel horsepower and 620 torque on E85, but right now on 93 it's making 497, and I forgot the torque. But 500 wheel in this car is so much fun, and now with this built bottom end, it hits right as early as possible. So this is a very rowdy setup, a lot of torque, so much fun. It has a copper spacer with cut ring head gasket. I put the copper spacer just so that I could comfortably run 500 horsepower on 93 and not have any issues, because the CP pistons were stock compression pistons, not low compression, because this was an NA race engine. So that's what the setup is. It's very Frankenstein, but everything is fully on my channel if you're interested in more details. But let's get to what the topic of this video is about. Hello everyone, I'm Joel. In this video, I want to talk about a few things that you must know before you turbo your BMW, or in fact, before you turbo any car. These are just common things that you should have in the back of your mind if you want to have this type of setup in your car. Number one, no matter how much preparation and research you do, there's always gonna be at least a few years of teething issues, of just random things breaking, random things going wrong that you just could never expect for that thing to go wrong constantly. I'm on year 4 currently. I finished this setup in 2020, and just now I'm finally getting it to a point where there's no more things on the back of my mind like, oh, I gotta go in and fix this, I gotta go in and fix this, just because there's so many and all of them are so small and they take so much time. that you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna do this real quick, and then it ends up taking 5 hours, and you're just like, dude, I would have never imagined something so small takes so much trial and error. Because it's also goes directly into number 2. If you're doing it on your own, you are going to make mistakes, but you have to not take anything personal. Don't get too upset. Just know everyone is making mistakes. No matter who you are, no matter how long you've been doing it, you are going to make mistakes, and it's just inevitable. Nobody's perfect. Life isn't perfect. Stuff's gonna happen that you lose concentration for 1 minute, no matter how good you are, and then boom, in that 1 minute is when something happens, and it's catastrophic sometimes, and you're just like, dude, really? And it's so aggravating a lot of times, but you just gotta take it on the chest and keep moving forward, because that is the only answer. It's either you figure it out or no one is gonna figure it out. This is number 3 now. Do everything on your own. Invest in the tools. It is going to be so worth it. It's gonna be difficult, but the amount of knowledge that you're gonna gain from doing it on your own is invaluable. For me to go and like learn all of the things that I've learned on this car, it would take so long if I was like reading books, and like I don't think it would even be possible, honestly, because a lot of people ask, how did I learn how to do everything? I learned purely from watching other people work on their car on YouTube. That's why I feel so compelled to show you guys all my mistakes and everything that I'm going through, because that's how I learned. I was watching other YouTubers that were messing up, and I was just like, okay, let me not do that. And then I do something completely different wrong, and I'm just like, damn, I would have never expected that to go wrong. Exactly like how I was just saying. It's inevitable, but the only way you can actually get better is by going through it, and then you're gonna have to do a lot of research. I tend to like to work on my car until I get to a point where I just have to research a bunch of things, and then I go home, or I just sleep on it a little bit so I can just research, read what other people have gone through. Even if it's a completely different chassis, read what they've gone through and see what just a whole bunch of different things that could potentially work. And then I go in to try and figure it out. And every single time I figure it out, because there is always an answer. No matter how crazy the situation is, there's always an answer. Another reason why it's in your best interest to do everything on your own is just because shops have so much to think about and so much on their plate that they can't physically have every single customer's best interest in their mind, because they're just trying to survive as well. They're trying to make a living as well. So it's like, you can't really blame them. But there's also another thing, like a lot of shops do this, and it's kind of, it's a big reason why I don't bring my car anywhere. I do everything myself. Is if you bring your car to a shop with all your parts and you're like, here, just put it together for me, the shop will be like, okay, yeah, we'll get it done. And then they'll use your parts to get other customers' cars done that have been waiting longer than you have, because they did the same thing for those customers. So it's like a big pyramid scheme of like not really ever being able to catch back up, just because you're just reusing everyone's parts and everyone is waiting so long, and like the only way to truly get the car done is by asking for more money. And then the customer's gonna be like, yo, what's the update on my car? And then you're like, there is no update because there's no parts. And it's just, it sucks. It's just, that's the way life is. It's either you adapt or you get swallowed. So like, I'd rather not get swallowed down by that trap. So I adapted and learned how to do it on my own. That's just the way life is. You can't make yourself a victim. You just gotta go out and figure it out on your own. Like, nobody's gonna give it to you. So that's just the way it is. It's gonna be way more expensive than what your build list actually says. And it's so hard. Everyone always says it, but it's like there's little things that just, you can never really put a value to how much it's gonna cost. That's why I think if you want to turbo your car, it's best to just stack up parts over the course of like a year, rather than saying, here's 6 or 7 grand, just buy them one piece at a time. I bought my turbo manifold on a forum for $400. When I had the money, I was like, let me buy the turbo manifold. And then I bought the blow-off valve and wastegate used. Just when I had the money, I was like, oh look, a good deal came up on Facebook, and I bought those used. And just over the course of a year, you're just stacking everything up and building up the perfect catalog for how to get it done. And then once the time comes, that's when you tear your car down. One of the biggest driving factors of people not getting their build done is just not seeing any progress. I learned when I was doing the painting of my body kit that you really have to focus on turning as many little things into small W's as possible. If you could turn things like, oh, clean the side skirt before you prep it, just spray it with dish soap and then wipe it down. Something that takes 10 minutes at most. If you could turn that into a little W and like a little accomplishment, it's gonna be able to feed your brain to, okay, at least something got done. Whenever you're just constantly messing up and constantly breaking things and constantly having things go wrong, it's so demoralizing and unmotivating. But if you have a driving car, those demoralizations are a lot easier to hide because you get to just hop in and drive the car, and then that becomes a W on its own. So that's why I think you should leave the car driving as long as humanly possible, just so that anytime you're having any little doubts, you could just hop in, drive in, and be like, yeah, I know that this is the right thing, just because every single time I'm driving this car, it makes me feel so good, and it just is an escape for me, you know? One very important thing that all of you must know. Some people have a lot more money than others, so because of that, they feel like, yo, I'm just gonna do it right on the first time and build the whole engine fully. Spend 10 grand on building the engine just so that I don't have to worry about it. I would not recommend doing that. Get everything put together with a stock engine and enjoy it stock first for at least 2 years. You need to get at least 2 years with that setup so that all the issues that are gonna happen and they don't blow up your very expensive engine. It happens so frequently that someone has a beautifully built engine and they're gonna use that right away on the car that's never been proven before, and then some very small overlook is the reason why it completely blows up and all that money's down the drain. And like, that's so heartbreaking. I can't imagine how sick that would make me if that happened to me. So I don't want any of you to go through that either. That just sounds like an absolute nightmare. So it's very recommended. Get all the teething issues done with a stock engine first. And then once the car is driving, build the nice engine while the car is driving, and then you could just have that nice engine on the stand so that boom, right when the stock one blows, you could just swap and you have a built engine, and the setup is all good. You know that the turbo size is all good. You know that the injectors are good. You know that the one injector is not stuck closed or stuck open, and then it washes your whole cylinders down and you lose compression in that cylinder. Like, it's such little things that it's out of everyone's control. It's just, you gotta play the game, and it's just, that's the way it is. And the reason that my M52 blew up was because I was doing a day of DoorDash, and I was doing a pull onto the highway kind of towards the end of the day, and I didn't realize that I was very low on gas, and when you do a pull with low fuel, that is not good. It just directly leans the whole engine out, and because of that, it blew the engine up. So now I have a surge tank in my trunk. This receives fuel from my stock gas tank, sends fuel back to the stock gas tank, and then there's a Walbro 450 inside of here that feeds the engine, goes through this 10 micron filter, and then receives back from the engine. So this surge tank is always 100% full of fuel, and I'm not gonna have any kind of fuel issues. So like, if my engine was built before and I blew it up because of this oversight, I would have been pissed. The next one is, always make adjustments to your technique. There is no one that's gonna come behind your back and say, yo, you know you should do it this way, but you're still doing it this way. Nobody's gonna tell you that. You're the one that has to take initiative and say, yo, last time I did it this way, I got nipped in the butt for it. So I need to try and do everything in my power to not have that same thing happen. Like, the perfect example was when I stripped the bolt in my turbo manifold. I put a time cert into my turbo manifold and I put it so crooked, and then my turbo wouldn't go on with that stud. So I was like, dude, that's so cooked. I didn't know that that was a thing. So when I also stripped my head for my cam stud, the cams have a really long stud that goes through the cam tray, and I knew last time I didn't pay much attention to the angle of how the tap went in. So this time I said, I'm gonna just check 50 times. That's not even an exaggeration. I would turn the tap half a turn and then grab the cam tray. Okay, it's still aligned. Turn it half a turn. Okay, grab the cam tray. Okay, it's still aligned. Turn the tap. Oh, it's not aligned. Fix it a little bit, and then I would just constantly be making sure that that was good, because I knew how brutal it is when you put the time cert in and it's not straight. It's basically the head's cooked if that would have happened. But I knew from my experience, I'm the one that has to take it into initiative. I'm gonna mess it up if I'm not very, very, very careful with that. So always make adjustments to your technique. It's all reliant on you. And the craziest part is too, you could be doing it perfectly. You know you're doing it the right way 99% of the time. But then the one singular time that you do it the wrong way, that you're like, oh, I'm kind of rushing it a little bit, I'm not doing it the way I know I should be doing it, it always happens on that one time, that it just always goes wrong on that one time. It's so aggravating and annoying, but that's just the way life is. I think it's called Murphy's Law. If anything is gonna happen, it's gonna happen, or something like that. I'm not too sure. It's just the last one that I'm gonna leave this video on is the amount of knowledge needed to maintain a turbo car is actually ridiculous. If I had someone build this car for me and then I was driving it and then something very small happened, it would be so difficult for me to trace it down because I wasn't the one that put it together. The whole car isn't burned into my head like how it is for me. I've been through every little inch of this whole entire car so many times that if I hear a little noise, I instantly know what it could possibly be. So like, I've thought about it before where I was like, yo, if someone built this car for me, I would have no idea where to start whenever something started to happen. Like, it would be very difficult, and even, I can't imagine, it would be so demoralizing to try and find where the issue is coming from if I had absolutely no idea what the car was consisted of. Like, I have a pretty simple looking system and everything, but like if there was things like tucked away really deep into a corner that you couldn't see unless if you put it together, that sounds like a nightmare. So like, that's why it's like, it's just, there's so many positives to doing it on your own, and why I suggest everyone to work on your car on your own. You obviously, hey Ant, get off my tripod. You obviously don't have to jump straight into doing a turbo setup if you've never worked on a car before. Start simple. Start with an oil change. Start with doing the brakes. Start with doing the things that your car needs. That's how I started. At first, it was always just me trying to fix the things that my car needed. And I was like hardly ever doing any mods because my car was just a hoopty. It constantly needed things. Like, I remember there was one time that in my old convertible, I had no idea why my car was running so poorly. And it was like sputtering so bad. And I didn't realize that it was because I put seafoam into the gas tank, and the seafoam agitated all the rust in my stock gas tank, and then that made it so I was just constantly killing fuel pumps, constantly killing fuel filters, and then the engine was just not running at all. It was just literally dying, like and it took me like 3 weeks to figure, or like a month to figure that out. And I just had no idea. It was me doing research, trying to figure it out, seeing what everyone said, and the solution was buy a whole new gas tank. I put a new gas tank in it, and it was like the biggest victory. I didn't know that much about cars, but once the car was actually running and I was ripping on it, I was like, yes, I figured it out on my own without the help of anybody. So that's like such a good feeling. It gives you the confidence to want to be able to go to another project and say, I figured that out, so why can't I figure this out? I figured that out, so why can't I figure this out? So it gives you all the confidence that you need in life to pursue literally anything. That's why building a car is not just building a car. It's about building yourself as a human being, and then you get to enjoy the result and the fruits of your labor directly. Like, there's just a direct connection with your right foot to the amount of adrenaline that you feel when you're driving your car. So it's like, this is why I'm so passionate about this car. I genuinely feel like I'm so connected with this car because of that reason exactly. A kid in the back of the minivan was waving at me. That was so cute. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this video down below. I could make another one. I could continue on with this, but this is a lot of information for you guys to process. I would highly recommend listen to what I said a few times so that you guys can really understand it all deeply and have that motivation. I want you guys to have that same fire that I have inside of me. I learned entirely from YouTube, not from any school, not from anyone else, just YouTube and doing research on my own. I would watch other people work on their cars, and that's how I'm here today. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you guys have any feedback or advice for anyone, leave it down in the comments, so anyone that's trying to get into working on cars, they could go down there and read up on what the community is saying. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at E30Joel to stay up to date with everything that I'm doing and all the behind the scenes of these YouTube videos. Subscribe and stay tuned. We're gonna get some more driving videos for sure. Take care, everyone.